Is it a technological innovation or the exhaustion of creativity in reducing poverty? The new 4131 model Daytona? Hello everyone, this is Professional Watch Guidance from Dabao Yan. Today, at the request of our watch enthusiast friends, we're bringing you a fairly comprehensive review of a toy watch from C, that is, the clean version. After all, we're extremely familiar with the Daytona. I must have made, no exaggeration, if not 100, then at least 80 videos about the Daytona. So if you want to learn about the previous generation C30 or the Yingda, you can check them out on Dabao's homepage. Take a good look. As for the new Daytona, how should I put it? I think the changes to the Daytona, this path of change, is really a cycle. Is it good looking? Well, that depends on each player's own perception. Everyone has their own preferences, just like some people like radishes and others like cabbage. Personally, regarding the new ceramic bezel on the latest model with the addition of this steel ring, it actually reduces the proportion of the ceramic area and makes the color of the chronograph subdials even narrower. Compared to the previous generation C130 Daytona, I feel it looks a bit stingy. So, I'm honestly not particularly interested in this new C3D model. As for the Dandong C30 movement, it has already been tested by many players in the market through real-world use, and it has received very high praise over the years. Very high praise. So since this C31 has just come out, we still need to see how it actually performs. That's my personal experience regarding the movement. Secondly, in terms of appearance, I actually prefer the design of the previous generation. But the reason I'm bringing out these watches today to give everyone a detailed explanation is because many enthusiasts want to know about the new C31 and how it compares. How should you choose between the old C30 and the new one? My personal conclusion is very clear. Go with the old C30. Whether it's the appearance or the movement, I personally prefer the previous version. Is there a difference between the G731 and the C130? There definitely is. For the official, specific differences, you can check out some information on Watch House and similar sites. They've updated a lot of modules and refined some of the movement finishing. Similarly, I've also put up the differences between the Shanghai C31 and the Dandong C30 movements currently on the market for everyone to see. You can take a look as well. In fact, the structures of these two movements are indeed different, but that's for the genuine versions. If we're talking about replicas, or the so-called Windows versions, there's actually no difference between these two movements at all. Only the appearance is different. It's the same meat, the same bones, just dressed in different clothes. That's how we should understand it. You could even say that for the toy versions, the 4130 and 4131 movements can be swapped with each other. It's just that one is a single calendar and the other is an asset. As you can see in my video, I actually have colored watches. These 4 watches are all C, completely local clean toy versions. The 4 models they've released are all C131 Lifeng movements. First, there's the Panda Daytona, the Black Peach Daytona, the Sean Yue edition, and the new Platinum Cement Gray. For these models, Clean has done extremely detailed work, very thorough research, very meticulous preparation. They themselves purchased 5 official original Rolex watches to use for mold making, and also did very detailed photo comparisons and explanations. Some enthusiasts might say, hey, are those comparison photos fake? Maybe they're using fake watches. But you can rest assured about this. Information is so transparent nowadays, and there are so many channels for comparison. If a manufacturer tried to fake it, it would be easily exposed. Let alone us, even experienced collectors, could easily spot it. So there's really no need to fake anything when it comes to this. So you can look at this matter in a very authoritative and impartial way. When you look at the real versus fake comparison charts made by the manufacturers, they do have some explanatory value. I won't go into all the details today. Instead, I'll just give a summary. Overall, when you compare this watch to the older version of the Clean C30, there really isn't much difference in quality. The polishing of the hands, the details on the dial, as well as the finishing on the strap and clasp are all up to standard. What makes me especially happy is that the new rubber strap precious metal model actually uses a micro adjustment feature, which was never implemented in any previous version of the booking models. Here, they directly use micro adjustments, so in the future, when we buy the rubber strap version of the Daytona, we won't have to worry about this anymore. You no longer have to worry about adjusting the length of the strap. You can directly make these quick adjustments just like with the Submariner. The internal micro adjustment provides nearly 1.5 centimeters of space and range, which is extremely practical. Aside from that, in terms of other details compared to the previous generation and the old C30 model, there aren't any major differences, so what's the main point? First, regarding the case shape, before this version, back in the 11.6-500 era, the steel case and the gold bracelet versions, such as the full gold model and the so-called Mao case, all shared exactly the same case. However, the white gold, rose gold, and platinum versions used a different case shape. In other words, before this version, the Daytona had 2 types of cases. Now with the 4131 version, all Daytona cases have been unified, completely unified. I've also attached the previous steel case shape on the screen for everyone to see. This is the current steel case shape. Let's take a look. See here, it's a flat end. Do you see it? Everyone, this is a flat end, which means it has a flat angle, whereas before this spot was a sharp angle. So from now on, whether it's the official version or the replica version, the new C13D Daytona, regardless of the model, whether it's stainless steel, yellow gold, rose gold, or platinum, their case shapes will all be standardized. They'll all have this flat angle. Actually, within our industry, colleagues say this helps factories save money since they no longer need to make different case shapes. They just need to make one case shape, and that will meet all the needs for the new pyramid models. Maybe that's also why these replica factories are more willing to produce the new energy-saving models rather than the older, more complicated ones. It lowers the overall cost of making the molds. The second point is the bezel. As I mentioned earlier, this bezel is different from the previous 116500 model in that it has an added metal rim here. There's a metal rim added here, which wasn't present before. As a result, the entire ceramic bezel becomes narrower, and the space for the numerals is also compressed. So, I feel it looks a bit stingy in comparison. However, if we take a closer look at the engraving on the whole watch, the overall engraving is still very well done and quite pleasing. Whether it's the deep rounded platinum sandblasted markers, the overall texture is still quite good. Next, let's talk about the dial. Taking the Panda Daytona as an example, we can see that the sub-dials, the black chronograph sub-dials, have become narrower. Also, the white area in the middle, compared to the black sub-dials, has a raised and lowered effect, almost like steps, creating a sense of depth. Now, let's emphasize the hands. The new C131 Daytona and the older C1301 and C130 Daytona S currently use the same set of hands in the replica versions. There's no difference at all. In fact, even on the official Rolex website, we can see that both the new Daytona and the older Daytona sometimes use the same style of hands. Why is that? It could be because they're clearing out the inventory of hands for the older C130 Daytona models. However, the official statement also says that the hands for the new models will be adjusted in the future. So right now, whether it's the replica factories or the original versions, the new C131 Daytona is being paired with the hands from the older C130 Daytona. This is a visible and well-known situation. Next, regarding the color arrangement, the color of the new models compared to the old C130 Daytona used to be either warm white or cool white. As for the dial color, it has a slight bluish tint. It's somewhere between cool white and warm white. In other words, although both the C131 Panda Daytona and the older C130 Panda Daytona have white dials, they're not the same shade of white. Another point is the diameter. Officially, whether it's the old 116500 or the new 126500, both are listed as having a 40mm case diameter. However, the actual measured diameter of the old model is 38.5mm, while the new model's actual measured diameter is 39.5mm. The old model has a thickness of 12.4mm, while the new model's thickness is 11.9mm. In other words, the actual size of the new 4131 Daytona is 1mm wider and 0.5mm thinner than before. These are some adjustments made to the overall dimensions. Another point I mentioned earlier is the clasp. Let's take Hugh Wenley's gold clasp as an example. The overall polishing, the rounded edges, and the gap at the edge, these details are handled extremely well. We can see that the craftsmanship is excellent. You can also see here that the polishing and the recessed areas are done perfectly, with no gold points left unfinished, and even the crown is handled very well. Everything is really great. The main thing is that it has an additional micro adjustment function, which I just demonstrated for everyone. Also, the gold axle inside and the fine sandblasted finish are all excellent, and even the brushed finish here is well done. There's a protective film here, but we can take a look through it. The overall engraving is very precise. Take a look, everyone. This is the current state of the case engravings on the Clean C31, including the anti-counterfeit marks here. They're all present as well. Next to the OXS and the A, there are several small dots. The AO750 fine sandblasted engraving and the doghead logo are still a bit rough, and the 750 marking is a bit too thin, especially the doghead logo, that's what I mean. But compared to the previous versions, there haven't been any major changes, nothing significant, so this new clasp isn't much different from before, except for a great micro adjustment feature. However, there's one thing to note. This kind of micro adjustment is only available on the precious metal models with rubber straps. As for the steel models, the Panda Daytona and the Black Dial Daytona still do not have any of these push-pull micro adjustments. Only the older generation versions have the press-type micro adjustment that you can use. You can see here, everyone only has this kind of micro adjustment, so you cannot do a quick adjustment. This is something that makes me a little bit disappointed. Currently, in the world of homage watches, the Dandong C30 movement is considered the absolute king. There is no other movement that is more stable, more accurate to the original, or better in any way. The only other durable one is the Submariner's 3135, but the 3135 is a simple three-hand movement without any chronograph function. When it comes to a complex multifunctional movement, the C30 is definitely the king. So what about the C131? Well, it's also This is the first time the Shanghai C31 has been used. As for how good this movement really is, I won't comment. Let time be the judge. Let's take a black ceramic die as an example to discuss a topic that many watch enthusiasts care about most. What are the differences between this and the original version? Actually, just like the old C301, it all comes down to the details and the overall feel. The strap, case, clasp, crown, and crystal. Honestly, you can swap these parts with the original without any issues. The only difference might be that the feel of the polished edges and the fineness of the brushing could be a little less refined, but to the naked eye, it's basically indistinguishable. So if you're looking for any significant differences, you really have to focus on the bezel, dial, and hands. Speaking of the hands, as I mentioned, they use the same set of hands as the old clean C30, which means they still have that slightly rough, stamped metal feel. The central axis isn't quite high enough, so it doesn't achieve that perfectly rounded effect. These issues are still present. This also includes the silvery gray texture of the subdials on the face, as well as the fineness of the patterns on them. There are still some differences. And as for the color of the platinum sandblasted bezel, there are also slight differences, though they're very subtle. Right now I've set up a 10 times macro lens for everyone to see. Everyone can take a look at the entire dial in the hands, especially the hands, which have a very noticeable grainy texture and aren't clean. This is a brand new, unused piece, and even the hour and minute hands have slight burrs and a jagged feel. So under the macro lens, the differences between the hands and the original are the most obvious. But as for the pinion, let's take a look at the central axis. Actually, everyone can see it, but the protruding effect isn't full enough. In other words, the central axis doesn't stand out high enough. As for the printing of the dial's font, there's actually no issue. The thickness and spacing are all right, but look here at the hour markers. The hour markers on the new C131 map version look more like a sword rather than a bullet. The original, or the older version C30, looks more like a bullet. It has rounded edges and is noticeably thicker. The new C31 version, however, is thinner. See, it's become slimmer and sharper. This makes the difference in finishing between the new and the original versions even more pronounced. If the original was a chubby little guy, and I also made it chubby, then they'd both look fat and you wouldn't notice the difference. But now that it's slimmed down, whoever is slimmer, whoever has more of that charm, the difference will become apparent. As for this matte finish, it's still not refined enough, not as meticulous as the original version. In terms of texture, but if you look at the font, the printing of the 3 chicken wing eye fonts is very fine, yet the ink still has a strong 3-dimensional feel. That deserves some praise. However, the overall sandblasting on its 3 silver gray dials is a bit rough. For example, there's noise, so the whole dial looks a bit thin because the markers are set too low. The sandblasting isn't fine enough. This is one of the differences on the dial. The outer ring still has issues with the sandblasting, as well as the edge cutting. Look at the upper left of the 6 and the upper right of the 6, the shape of the numbers themselves. It's not that smooth, and if you look closely at the sandblasting, you'll also notice slight noise. The original version doesn't have such obvious noise, of course. All these differences are things I observed under my magnifying glass. It's almost impossible to notice them with the naked eye. These are the issues we can observe with the black ceramic base. By analogy, the same problems exist with the white Panda base as well, just that the differences aren't as pronounced, because if you look at the subdials on the Panda Daytona, you'll see they have a CD pattern instead of platinum. The CD pattern isn't very distinct, and it's also rather rough, see? It's also rather rough, and the gaps between the lines are uneven, which doesn't look particularly refined. There are also some speckles visible on the surface, including right here. The same goes for the markings, so is there room for improvement with this watch? Definitely, but at present there aren't any aftermarket parts on the market that are of particularly good appearance or high quality. As for genuine parts, you can't really get them for now. For the new Rolex models, the parts are basically impossible to remove. They're just too expensive. Maybe in another year or two, it will become easier to take them apart. But for now, it's very hard to take apart. As for the new model worn by Sean Yue, it's actually made quite beautifully. Because the gold bezel paired with a black ceramic ring, I think this design is very unique. So among the new C31 Daytona models, I personally think the gold colorway is quite attractive, especially the black and gold combination. And this time Clean was pretty smart. They no longer put a protective film on the crystal, but instead, did you notice? They put it on the bezel. They put a protective film on the bezel. I've already peeled it off, except for the one on Sean Yue's model. The others I've removed. This one is the cement gray. Actually, the color of this cement gray is already very accurate. It's just that the sunburst effect is a bit weaker, not as pronounced as the original version. The other cement gray nearsighted eye is the same as the nearsighted eye on the Panda Daytona. It has a track on the cement gray. The entire subdial, the axis of the 3 subdials at 1, 2, and 3 o'clock, this area here is recessed. See? There's a dip. The whole thing is sunken in. The center area is recessed. If we look at Sean Yue's model, it actually has a recessed center as well. With the 3 subdials arranged like this, all black dials tend to have this issue because this kind of texture easily creates such a visual effect. Because indeed, after you take it apart, the entire dial isn't that flat either. It's slightly recessed. Actually, even the black ceramic base is capped, and there's a bit of a dip underneath. This is to allow the hands to sit closer to the dial, minimizing the gap between them. This increases the overall thickness and layering of the watch. That's the kind of treatment they'll do. Alright everyone, that's basically all I have to say about today's new 4131 Daytona. For the toy factories, it's really just old wine in a new bottle. They've made some minor tweaks, but nothing groundbreaking or particularly impressive. There's no need for us to spend too much time on this. Finally, let me show you the luminous effect of all 4 watches together. The ice blue lume is also very beautiful. That's all for the review of this watch. If there's more to discuss, we'll continue in the next episode.